Welcome. In this video we're going to be exploring draw.io or diagrams.net as a tool for drawing flowcharts and possibly other diagrams as well. And when you access the site you hit this front page with their old web address draw.io, which is another way of getting to the page, and you can just go straight down and click start and it creates a blank diagram ready to save. And that's one of the most important things to do at the beginning, is to save your diagram, because once you've saved and named your diagram, you can just press the save button or Control S on the keyboard to make sure your diagram can be loaded in again. So if you see untitled diagram at the top or anything like that, click on File, Save As, and you'll see this little dialog box in the middle of the screen. Access the Where dialog box and select Device. Now you can keep it as untitled diagram if you want, but it's actually best to change this part of the name, but keep that extension .draw.io on the end, like so, and then press save. Now find your school OneDrive in File Explorer that pops up, and you can decide to save it in the Documents folder or in the root OneDrive folder, or you can create your own new folder for computer science if you wish to, just so you know where everything is. And this is a second opportunity to change the file name if you wish to, and then click save. And notice the name of the file has now changed, and to save from this point onwards we can just go to the File menu and hit Save. And notice there's a shortcut, Control S, which allows you to save even without going to the menu. Do this as often as you can. So now our diagram is safe, we can make a start. Over on the left hand side you've got the object bar, lots of different categories of objects. We'll be using this general one most of the time, but also for one of the diagrams, the flowchart selection. Back to that in a second. Over on the right hand side you'll see the properties panel, which will change depending on what's selected. At the moment, for example, we have the background selected, and you can do things like turn the grid off, back on again, and change other settings if you want. Now this task is all about just getting used to using diagrams.net. So we're going to be drawing a flowchart together, and the idea is that you copy it as we go, or use this video to recap if we go a little bit too fast for you, or if you need to finish it off at home. And you'll be learning a few things about the different flowchart symbols along the way. Now a flowchart describes the processing of a computer program, from the beginning when it's first started, to the point where the program ends. So the first thing we need to put into a flowchart are symbols representing the start and the end. Now this is the only symbol I don't grab from the general section. I actually use the flowchart section for this. And towards the bottom of the flowchart section, there is a symbol called Terminator, and it looks a bit like an athletic racing track. So I'm going to grab one of those and drag it to the top. Now notice the symbol has 8 little handles around the edge, and these can be used for resizing, reshaping the symbol. And you can grab the middle of the shape to move it around. Double click anywhere on the shape to enter some text. So I'm going to enter start for this first symbol, and click outside the shape to stop editing. Now with the symbol selected, notice the panel on the right now has 3 separate tabs. One for the style, things like background colour, and so on and so forth. Notice that the line width is size 2. That's going to come in handy later to match up other symbols. But I can also go to the text selector and make the text bold, do what I like with it really. I'm just going to stick with making it bold, so it stands out. I'm going to be using this same symbol to represent the end of the flowchart. So I could, for example, copy the symbol, which of course is Control C, and I could paste it. But there is an option that does both together. Duplicate. Press duplicate and we get another one of the same symbol. So once you've set up a symbol, making it look right, you don't have to go through the process of setting up that same symbol again. You can just duplicate one and change the text. So here I'm just going to plonk it over here for a second and then just change that to end. Okay, so I've got a terrible flowchart now, just start and end, nothing in between. So I'm going to put the rest of the flowchart down here, and the first symbol I'm going to do is what we call a process. Now this is going to be from my general section. I'm going to use a rectangle. Grab and place that on the grid. It's a bit tall for me, so I'm going to make it a bit shorter. And over in the Style tab, I'm going to increase the line width to 2, so it's just the same thickness as the outside of the start symbol, trying to keep things consistent. And I could also, while I'm there, make the text bold. So when I put my text in, it's going to look the same as in the start symbol. Now these rectangles, processes, are designed to do things that the computer does without any user input, calculations, that sort of thing. In this case, we're going to create a variable. Now a variable in computing represents a memory location where data is stored. And those memory locations have what we call identifiers or names. And the identifier for this variable is going to be called counter. It's going to be doing some counting. And we're going to set that equal to 0. Now this statement in computing is called an assignment. We're taking the value 0 and we're assigning it. That's what that equals represents. It's not actually the equals you get in maths. we're assigning it to the variable counter. So this simply means set the variable counter to 0. And we also need another variable called total, which you'll see what we're using that for in a minute. And so I can duplicate this symbol, get another one, throw it underneath, and change counter to total. So we now have both of our variables set up and initialized to a value 0. Now notice I've now got 3 symbols in a row, and if I move these symbols around, you'll notice there's some clues, like this vertical line going up through start. There's some clues to show me that the symbols are actually lined up. And it's very important to make sure the symbols are nicely lined up for later on. Watch this space. Okay, so the next symbol is going to be a diamond. So let's grab a diamond and pull it into place. Bit small this, so I'm going to make it a bit bigger and then line it up. Once again, set the text to bold and the style to have a slightly thicker border. And this is where I'm going to put some arrows in for the first time, just to explain the difference between this diamond, which is a very special symbol, and all of the others on a flowchart. Now obviously we start at start, and every symbol and every flowchart symbol should have a single way out, a single place where you move on to another symbol. So this symbol is going to flow down to this one's going to flow down to this one, and this one's going to flow down to this one. To put the arrows on, all we do is hover over the symbol, and notice you get these little anchor points, little blue crosses. And if I move the mouse over one of the blue crosses, it highlights in green. Click the mouse at that stage, and I can then pull an arrow from that anchor point and land it on another anchor point on another symbol. This means these two symbols are now joined together, and I can actually move that symbol, and you'll notice the arrow flows with it. So that way I can join these symbols together and put all the nice arrows in that shows the flow from one symbol to the next. However, a diamond is a decision, and decisions have a yes-no answer or true-false. So what I put inside the diamond is the decision we need to make. Now in this case, we're going to be looking at the value of the variable counter and making a decision yes or no. And the decision we're making is whether counter is less than 5. And that's either true or it's false. Obviously at the beginning, when it first flows through, counter is 0, so this is true. So we're going to have an arrow going off to the right and an arrow going downwards. And the downwards arrow is going to be if this is true. So if this is still true, if counter is still less than 5, we're going to do something else. And this is going to be a new symbol, an output symbol. And we use a parallelogram to represent inputs and outputs. So essentially a slanted rectangle. Once again, I need to make the width a bit bigger and change the text to bold. And what I do in here is I either write input or output. In this case, I'm going to be doing an output. And what I'm going to be outputting in this symbol is just a little message. Enter a number. Okay, just an instruction to the user. Something like that. Very, very simple. The next symbol is also going to be a parallelogram. So I need to duplicate that one, put it underneath. But this is going to be an input. Now be careful with your spelling. It's commonly pronounced with an M. But the symbol is to put data into the computer, put it in. So it's going to be input, I-N, put. And what we need to put into this symbol is where is it going to be stored? And we're going to be storing whatever the user types in another variable called number. So at this point, we've introduced 3 variables into our program: counter, total, and number. We're going to use another process symbol. Let's duplicate this one and let's pop that down in the next part of our sequence. Now total starts off at 0, which is what's there at the moment. But what we actually want to do is we want to add the number that was just typed in to the total. So you have to think to yourself, how would you, with the value in total, how would you add on the value in number? And that's going to be the current value of total plus the value stored in number. This isn't a maths equation. That symbol there means take what's on the right hand side, work it out, do the calculation, and then store it in the variable on the left hand side. So this is going to take the current value of total, it's going to add on whatever we've just typed in, and it's then going to store the result back into the variable total. So total goes up by whatever number is. Finally, we're going to adjust counter. So counter starts off at 0, and what we're going to be doing is we're going to be increasing that number by 1 each time. So very similar to what we just did here. So we're going to do a calculation here on the right hand side to increase counter by 1, which of course is counter plus 1. So counter is going to increase by 1 each time. And that's more or less our flowchart. Let's put our little arrows on. Let's join this bottom edge of the decision, which is going to be our yes branch. So I'm going to just, while the arrow's selected, I'm just going to type in the word yes, like that. And then I'm going to join the symbols up in sequence, so it's very clear what operation goes on next. And then what we want to do is, when we've done this operation, we want to go all the way back round and we want to come back to this decision. So let's grab hold of the anchor point on the left and let's take it round and drop it on the anchor point on the left hand side of the decision. Now this is a little bit cramped, and these little blue dots allow you to adjust the position. So I'm just going to move that position out there. So when we've flowed all the way down to this operation, run it, we are then going to automatically come back round and see where the counter is still less than 5. Well, what happens when we do go that way? We're actually going to do an output. So we're going to output, let's duplicate, we're going to output the total. Okay, so the computer's going to print the total. Now you can actually, if you want to, output more than just the total, and you'll see this in Visual Basic and also in the software we're going to be using later on in this unit. We can use the AND symbol. And what you can do is print some text on the screen that appears before the number. So I'm just going to put here total, colon, and a space. And so I can now join this right-hand end of the decision out to the symbol and type in no, because that's my no branch. I could also put true here and false there. Sometimes on flowcharts you'll see true and false, yes and no, as long as it's clear how you escape from the loop. And then after the output, we need to end the flowchart. So this is where I need to grab my end of my flowchart. I'm going to put that down here. Notice I can use those two lines to make sure everything's nicely lined up. And then I can join the bottom anchor point down to that symbol. And we now have a completed, fully flowing flowchart. What's left to do? Maybe a bit of colouring in. I'm going to just colour in, using the style, the symbols for the start and the end the same colour. Flowgorithm's generally good, even if you pick a bright colour like this, at making sure the text changes colour so you can read it, but try to avoid any combination of colours that means that you can't read the text. So back to a more subtle colour. So one style I like is to colour in all the symbols of a particular shape the same colour, so it makes the flowchart easier to read. It's entirely up to you how you do that. Final job is to get yourself a screenshot, of course, and this is where I tend to turn the grid off because I find a one-note screenshot with a blank background is a bit nicer. Do your standard key press and then select from one corner of the flowchart to the other and paste that into your OneNote, so you've got yourself a copy of the whole flowchart. I was a bit naughty during this, I never pressed save. So do remember to pop to the file menu, as often as you can remember, press save, or just simply press Ctrl S using the keyboard and it will instantly save. And when you return to diagrams.net, either at home or at school, you can use the open dialog box, so open from and select device, and that will take you to your OneDrive. And a handy hint is to click date modified at the top, which will place all your OneDrive files in date order with the newest one at the very top. And here you can see the flowchart I've just saved, and it will open the flowchart up for further editing. So try and make your own copy of this flowchart and make it look better than mine does. Colour it in properly, take a screenshot, pop it in your OneNote.